All right, everyone. Debate one was on. Let's get it on. All right, welcome everyone to my channel. This is Bruce the Boss Brooks. If you're brand new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that little notification bell so you can get notified of my latest content, because subscribing really greatly helps this channel grow and get the message out there and the conversation out there that I know the many in the mainstream media does not want us to have. And don't forget to smash on that like button. All right, so let's get into the debate. Now, I'm going to just put it like this. Trump won. That's my objective opinion, because yes, you can say he was arrogant. Yes, he was rude. Yes, he was a bully. But Trump set the pace of the conversation. He dominated the conversation. He was constantly on the attack, while Joe Biden was playing defense the whole time. Biden even let Trump interrupt him time and time again, and he was never able to respond with that response that was able to put Trump in his place to quiet him down. Trump just did whatever. He took control. Joe Biden really did not have the respect of Trump that night. Yes, Trump was a bully, but he proved himself to be the biggest dog in the yard, whereas Biden was a little bit more passive. So I would honestly say Trump in that conversation was the alpha male. Biden was the beta male. And while you can say, yes, Biden was soft-spoken, he was trying to be polite, considerate, I guess you can say professional even, which may work for the Angela Merkels, the Justin Trudeau's, the Boris Johnsons of the world. But how's that going to play with China? President Xi, how's that going to play along with Vladimir Putin and or the leader of North Korea, whoever that happens to be, if something really is wrong with Kim Jong-un? Between the two, when you're talking about some of these badass dictators, who do you want to have that conversation? Who do you want leading the fight against them in certain situations? So let's not forget, though, this is also a battle between, it's no longer a battle between Republicans and Democrats, but rather between tyranny and freedom, civil liberties versus oppression and draconian and your authoritarian kind of rule. You have one leader who's talking about putting us in another lockdown. Let's not forget about that. And let's not forget what the lockdowns cost this country and cost the world as a price of it. All right. We're talking about, we had one of the strongest economies we had seen in over 50 years, truth be told. And then the shutdown just took us to levels back to literally took us to levels back to like the Great Depression. And now we are seeing what, as Chris Matthews even said, one of the biggest rises that was really unexpected. And that was as a result of many states easing and coming out of those lockdowns. Put us back in that lockdown and you'll put us back into another depression state. You'll put us in another position where we cannot fend for ourselves as individuals. Putting the businesses in a situation where they have to shut down forever. You saw suicides increase, domestic violence increase, and we're already seeing crime rise at a rapid pace across this country as a result of the lockdowns. Because when people lose their jobs, when people are unemployed or put into a position of poverty, crime is going to increase. And I don't think that these Black Lives Matter riots and or looters were just doing it because of their concern and or cries for injustice. These are not the voices of the unheard. These were the voices of people who were imprisoned in their home with no way of feeding themselves and or knowing when they were going to eat, and just bottled up and just saw that tension rise until all it took was one light to be lit, one candle to be sparked, and kaboom. We cannot put our country back through another lockdown. You also have one candidate that is promoting mass, talking about a national mask mandate. We don't need a national mask mandate. They say, well, if you wear a mask, it'll cut the virus in half, and or we'll have this beat by such and such time. And while, yes, there are some studies that are trying to push that agenda, we also have Sweden as an actual example where they did not do any mask mandate as a country. And they're getting the virus under control. The hospitals are not overwhelmed. You are not seeing massive deaths amongst the general population. If I'm not mistaken, 96% of all of the deaths that they have attributed to COVID-19 were people over the age of 65, 70, and it happened mostly all in a nursing home. So then of that 96% of the elderly, 82% occurred in their nursing home. So they had a problem containing it amongst that one demographic. But you can keep the rest of the population out there undisturbed, not crashing their way of life, because it's not going to affect the majority like that. And we don't need a one size fits all. We don't need a mask mandate. There were a group of doctors in Belgium. I'll put a link in the description box below. They call themselves Docs for Debate, where they were challenging these narratives that politicians like Biden were trying to promote regarding wearing a mask in every single situation, including situations where I can be sitting in a park several feet away from the nearest soul until the cops come up to me. And the cops in Miami are talking about giving you a fine. You know, some of these rules don't make sense, but I digress. Those doctors in Belgium, again, Docs for Open Debate, said a lot of these mask rules and or some of these so-called studies that haven't even been fully peer reviewed on this particular topic really just don't make any sense in how the immune system works. Again, I'll leave a link in the description box below, because a lot of people will say, oh, I'm not going to listen to some YouTuber or some friend on Facebook. You know, you listen to the experts. Well, the experts are speaking. You have a lot of experts, and it's not just limited to these doctors here in Belgium. Again, we have Sweden and some of their top virologists and epidemiologists, which is why the country of Sweden is not having a mask mandate. We've had doctors here in the United States, including Dr. Erickson, if I'm not mistaken, all come out. A lot of these doctors, frontline doctors of America, have come out and said, you know what, a lot of this does not make sense based upon what we know about immunology 101. You do not mask the healthy. You know, they'll say, it's just a mask. It's just a mask. Why can't you just wear it for 15 minutes? A lot of these nurses have to wear it all day, 12-hour day shifts. Why can't you just put it on for 15, 20 minutes while you go to the store real quick? You're not really grasping what these masks really represent. One, they are an infringement of your rights and their liberties. I'm going to wear a mask when I go into a Walmart store or whatever. I'm not going to put up a fuss like that girl in the stadium there in Ohio and create a scene. If a place requires me to wear a mask, I'll wear it and comply for the sake of it. Although I'll give you the middle finger as I'm doing it indoor, at least wearing a mask that criticizes and talks about how stupid this whole thing is. But it is just that. It's really stupid. And these masks are representing your consent. You're acquiescing to authority, to government rule, to you losing your voice, to you being just another face. Because when you wear a mask like these, unless if you make it unique in its design, you look just like everyone else. And again, and speaking of the woman in Ohio, just to digress, again, I think, you know, just comply when you're being approached by an officer. But then it just goes to show just how stupid these mask mandates are, because she was not near anyone other than her own party. Everyone there was social distancing. Why do you need to wear a mask? If you can go into a restaurant, wear a mask when you're going in, but then sitting at the table with your party without the mask the whole time. How's that any different than what she was doing? So that just goes to just the severity and how much authoritarian these governments are getting with some of the simplest rules, including that of the mask. You know, they talked about race relations, and yes, you can say on the optics, Trump doesn't look the best, not exactly the most sympathetic, but then at the same time, he was the one who signed the First Step Act that helped get people out of prison and back into society, and actually releasing people from jail. All right, so Biden is not really that great on race relations when you look at his actual history and or legislation in his 47 years in Washington. Because look back to 1987, for instance, when he partnered with a very well-known segregationist in Congress to help pass a law that mandated a 5-year prison sentence for 5 grams of crack cocaine, while on the flip side, it takes 500 pounds of powder cocaine to trigger the same sentence. Now, what does crack and cocaine mandatory sentencing have to do with race relations? Well, I'll show you. Who gets arrested for crack cocaine? It's largely always been blacks. 90% of all crack arrests were blacks, while about 80% of all powder cocaine are whites. And so Joe Biden passed a law knowing that blacks are more likely to get arrested for crack cocaine, triggering a 5-year mandatory sentence for just 5 grams. While on the flip side, he passed a law in 1987 that was knowingly high. The arrest rate for whites was 80%, required 500 grams of powder cocaine to trigger the same sentence. 100 times as much that you will give the black person is what it required for a white defendant, essentially. It may not have said it black and white, but you know who's getting arrested for what. And then fast forward about 7 years, 1994 crime bill, where he and Madam President Hillary Clinton, both on the Senate floor, referred to blacks as super predators raised by single mothers. He said this specifically. They were raised by the single parent home with no conscience, no social teachings, and they will come after your children and mine and my loved one unless we move them out of the streets. And that's exactly what they wound up doing with the crime bill. On any given day in 1995, 1 out of 128 adult males was incarcerated, while 1 out of 17 adult black males were incarcerated. The rate of sentencing and or arrest was disproportionately against black people as a direct result of Joe Biden's crime bill. So that's Joe Biden's history on race relations. Harsher sentencing for crimes committed by largely black people, and then a crime bill that started locking and incarcerating blacks at a higher rate than anyone else in this country. That's his history, and again, let's talk a response to the coronavirus. Again, now, as far as this 200,000 deaths associated with coronavirus, COVID-19, we all know that that's not real. That number was highly inflated. Whenever you include someone who was shot by the cops 7 times and killed by those gun bullets, but they have the nerve to say on the news that this was a death, COVID death. A 21-year-old in Florida was killed, and they tried to say this is proof that this affects young people as well, 21 years old. Well, Fox 39, I think it is, down there in Florida, decided to go to the hospital to try to investigate, did this 21-year-old have pre-existing conditions? Tell us more. And then it was only because they asked questions that they find out, oh, well, he died in a motorcycle accident. But you still wanted to count him as a COVID death? I mean, Dr. Birx herself even came out and said that the United States was being so liberal with COVID-19 deaths that you could be in hospice care with only 2 weeks to live. And it doesn't matter at what point during your final 2 weeks on this earth while you're in hospice dying that you catch and test positive for COVID-19. But even if you caught it and, let's say on day 11 and you only have like 3 days left and you do test positive for COVID-19 and you die, just like you were going to within that 2 weeks, that will still count as a COVID death. They are counting whatever they can as a COVID death, hiking up the numbers. It is not 200,000. I honestly don't even think it's nearly that much. Even the New York Times admitted a lot of the deaths, and there was one article where they were reporting in New York City where out of the 10,000 deaths that were being reported in New York City, 3,700 of them were never even tested for the virus. They were never tested positive. They were just suspected. And that's 37% out of 10,000. That's thousands of people who were just suspected of COVID, not even tested to prove that they even died of it. So they're including not only people who could have died of or were in the process of dying of something else but just tested positive, but just suspected death. And don't even get me started on the false positives out there, which goes into that report done by the doctors in Belgium. Again, they expose it. And again, I'll leave a link to that open letter that the doctors in Belgium put out there just last week on the 21st of September, where they were exposing a lot of these tests are false positive. What was his name? Governor DeWine of Ohio, for instance, took the test twice in the same day and got their results back on the same day. I don't know how many days since he took the test that he got them back, but he got them back just at 2 different times on the day. One test tested him as positive, the other one as negative. quarterback of the Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford, tested positive for COVID-19 on a Friday, took the test again Saturday, Sunday, Monday, so 3 consecutive days thereafter, and tested negative. Positive on Friday, negative Saturday, Sunday, Monday. How do you test positive and then get 3 consecutive negatives thereafter? There is something seriously wrong with these tests, and they're attributing people's deaths to this, based upon faulty tests. They're basing these increasing numbers based upon faulty tests. And I don't see Biden challenging any of this information that is then driving policy. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered about the accuracy of these tests. The president of Tanzania in Africa even wanted to prove that he was kind of being set up by his own government. So what did he do? He did a little sting because he thought that there was a lot of false numbers regarding the positive rates in his country. So he took the sample of a sheep, a fruit, a fly, if I'm not mistaken, and he sent them in with human names, and they all tested positive. And he's like, you see, these tests are not the most accurate, these PCR tests. And again, this is not a layman saying this, although, again, I'm citing examples showing a lot of false positives being reported out there. But again, this is in the report of these doctors there in Belgium. You can read it for yourself. This is not coming from a layman. This is just coming from someone who's well-researched. And you have a Joe Biden that just will not challenge the narrative, will not challenge the numbers. And that's very concerning, and that's very alarming, especially when you're dealing with our freedoms, our livelihoods, our way of being, and our mental health, when that is all involved. So that's just my thought of the first debate. I want to really get your thoughts and your opinions on it. Please comment them in the comment section below. If you really agree with some of my line of thinking, don't forget to hit the like button and or subscribe if you want to get more and more of my content. This is Bruce the Boss Brooks reporting from New Jersey today. I'm on the East Coast. I'm visiting friends and family for about a week. So should be interesting, but can't wait to come back to my home state of Texas next week. But I am just loving it because it's just been so long. But again, I digress. Thank you for watching the video. Y'all have a great night. Peace.